Dr. Li Mingi rubbed her tired eyes and stared at the endless stream of cosmic static flowing across her monitors. Titan Station felt more like a prison than a research facility today. She had been stuck in this metal box orbiting Saturn for 3 years, listening to nothing but empty space chatter and solar wind interference. The observation deck was barely large enough for 2 people, crammed with equipment that hummed and beeped constantly. Her coffee mug sat cold on the console, a brown ring staining the metal surface. She should have gone to bed hours ago, but something kept her glued to her chair. Call it intuition, but today felt different. At exactly 0347 hours, everything changed. The quantum receiver exploded to life with a signal unlike anything in her databases. The frequency was impossibly complex, layered with harmonics that made her skin crawl. Then came the voice, beautiful and terrifying at the same time, like a song mixed with screams. This is Cathara Prime calling. Any who will listen. We are dying. The hegemony fleet surrounds our world. 3 billion souls face extinction. Please, someone help us. Minji's hands shook as she fumbled for the recording controls. Akithara. She knew them from her xenobiology studies, tall, graceful beings who spent their lives studying mathematics and philosophy. They had never built weapons, never fought wars. They were the galaxy's teachers and thinkers. The transmission continued, and each word made her stomach turn. The voice belonged to someone young, maybe barely an adult by Cathara standards. The hegemony came 3 days ago. Their ships blocked out our sun. They said we were weak, that weakness must be purged from the galaxy. Our defense fleet, they destroyed it in minutes. Static crackled through the message, but the voice pushed on. 12 worlds have fallen before us. The hegemony takes survivors as slaves or worse. They use some as food. Others they force to fight in their arenas for entertainment. The children. They take the children and break their minds, turn them into soldiers. Minji felt sick. Had heard rumors about the hegemony, a brutal alliance of predator species that viewed the galaxy as their hunting ground. But these were just stories, distant nightmares that happened to other people in other sectors. We searched our archives for anyone who might help, the Cathara continued. We found references to a species called Terrans, warriors from a death world who once fought impossible battles and won. We don't know if the stories are true, if you even exist, but we're begging you, if there are any Terrans listening, please. We have children here, innocent lives who have never hurt anyone. The signal began to fade, distorted by distance and interference. This is probably our last transmission. Our power cores are failing. If you can hear this, know that we tried to be good, tried to make the galaxy better with our knowledge. We just wanted to learn and teach and live in peace. Please don't let them win. Please don't let our children die forgotten. Then silence. Minji sat frozen for several seconds before her training kicked in. Odd. She activated every backup system recorded. The signal from 17 different angles and ran it through every analysis program she had. Then she grabbed her secure communicator and called the one person who would understand the magnitude of what she had just heard. Admiral Park, this is Dr. Li at Titan Station. Priority Alpha emergency. I need you to hear something right now. Admiral Park Dong-yoon was in his quarters on Terra Command Station when the call came through. Within minutes of hearing the recording, he was fully dressed and heading to the emergency command center. By the time Minji's transmission reached Earth 2 hours later, every major government leader was gathered in crisis session. The debates started immediately and grew heated fast. Defense Minister Kim Soo-yoon paced the length of the conference room, her voice sharp with concern. We've maintained peaceful isolation for 40 years. Our colonies are thriving. Our people are safe. Why should we risk everything for aliens? We've never met. President Yoon Juan sat quietly at the head of the table, studying intelligence reports that painted a grim picture. Admiral Park stood beside a holographic display showing hegemony fleet movements across the galaxy. "'Cause they're coming for us next," Park said grimly. Our intelligence networks have been tracking hegemony expansion for months. They're not random raiders. They're systematic. They eliminate what they call weak species first, then move on to potential threats. He activated the hologram, showing red markers spreading across star maps like a virus. 12 worlds in 6 months. Each time, they study their victims first, learn their weaknesses, their military capabilities, their population centers. Then they strike with overwhelming force. Kim Soo-yoon stopped pacing. What are you saying? I'm saying they already know about us. Park pulled up another display showing captured human colonial ships. These are our people, Minister. Hegemony scouts have been taking colonists from the Outer Rim for 3 months, studying them, learning about Earth's location and defenses. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. President Yoon finally spoke, her voice steady but cold. Show me the intelligence assessment. Park activated his personal datapad, and classified files appeared on the main screen. Communications intercepts, witness testimonies from survivors, tactical analyses of hegemony fleet movements, all painting the same picture. They call us promising livestock, Park read from one report. High endurance, adaptive, good breeding stock. They've already marked Sol system for future conquest. The only question is when. Defense Minister Kim felt the blood drain from her face. How long do we have? It's based on their expansion pattern. 6 months? Maybe less? They're using the Cathara genocide as training, preparing their forces for what they consider their real prize, Earth. President Yoon stood slowly, her decision crystallizing with each heartbeat. She thought about her own children, safe in their school on Luna Colony. She thought about the Cathara voice, young and terrified, begging for help that might never come. They made this personal the moment they touched our people, she announced to the assembly. And now they're practicing genocide on innocents while planning to do the same to us. She activated the global communication system, her image appearing on screens across human space. Citizens of Earth and all human colonies, this is your president. We have just learned of a threat to all peaceful life in our galaxy. Alliance called the Hegemony is systematically exterminating innocent species while preparing to attack our worlds. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within hours, every major news network was broadcasting the Cathara transmission. Social media exploded with anger and determination. Military recruitment centers reported massive lines of volunteers. Will not stand by while innocents die, Yoon continued her address. We will not wait for monsters to come to our door. Today, humanity answers the call. We go to war. The sleeping giant had awakened. Its fury would shake the galaxy. The transformation began before President Yoon's speech even finished. Corporate CEO Choi Min-woo was in his Seoul office when the broadcast ended, staring at profit projections for the next quarter. Without hesitation, he grabbed his secure phone and called his production managers. Shut down the entertainment lines, he ordered. All of them. The gaming consoles, the virtual reality systems, the music players, everything stops now. Assistant looked confused. Sir, we'll lose billions. ... We'll lose everything if those monsters reach Earth, Min-woo snapped. Retool every factory. I want military hardware rolling off those lines within 48 hours. Get me the blueprints. For those new plasma rifles the military was testing, across the planet, similar scenes played out in boardrooms and laboratories. Dr. Song Yuna was deep in her cancer research lab when the emergency broadcast reached her. She had been on the verge of a breakthrough, years of work finally coming together. But as she listened to the Cathara's desperate plea, she made a choice that would change everything. Pack it up, she told her research team. All of it. We're switching to weapons development. Her lead researcher protested. Doctor, we're so close to a cure. We could save millions of lives. And what good will curing cancer do if the hegemony turns us all into livestock? She replied grimly. Right now, we need to save our species first. Within hours, her team was designing new weapon systems. Their medical knowledge twisted into instruments of war. Plasma scalpels became energy weapons. Radiation therapy machines were converted into ship-mounted cannons. Her cancer-fighting nanobots were reprogrammed to eat through alien armor. At the Luna City retirement home, 70-year-old Colonel Kang Ji-hoon was playing chess with his grandson when the news broke. The old soldier's hands, weathered from decades of service, began to shake. Not with age, but with rage. "Grandpa," his grandson asked. Worried Kong stood slowly, his military bearing returning like an old uniform. "Son, call your parents. Tell them Grandpa's going back to work." By the next morning, recruitment centers across human space were overwhelmed. The line outside the Seoul military complex stretched for 3 kilometers. Former soldiers, fresh graduates, factory workers, teachers, they all came. The waiting. Time was 8 hours, but nobody left. Jin Hyok, a high school math teacher, stood in line next to Park Sora, a professional chef. Behind them was Lee Taeun, a professional gamer who had never held a real weapon in his life. "You sure about this?" Sora asked Jin Hyok. "You've got students who need you." "Those kids won't have a future if we lose," he replied. "Besides, someone has to teach these aliens that humans don't give up." The response from the outer colonies was even more dramatic. On Ceres, the asteroid mining complex that supplied Earth with rare metals, Foreman Kim Do-ho gathered his crew of 500 miners in the main hangar. "Boys," he announced, "we've been digging rocks for 15 years. Today we're going to war." The miners cheered, their industrial equipment already being converted into weapons. Their massive ore haulers became troop transports. Their drilling. Lasers were upgraded into ship-mounted cannons. Their mining explosives were repackaged as military ordnance. On Mars, terraform engineers faced a different challenge. Dr. Cho Hunbin had spent a decade turning the red planet into a garden world. Now, he was being asked to turn his paradise into a fortress. "We can convert the atmospheric processors into shield generators," he told the military liaison. "The weather control systems can create electromagnetic interference. And those new domes we're building, they can be hardened into military bunkers." Even the research stations around Jupiter joined the effort. Dr. Yoon Min-jae, studying the gas giant storms, found herself redirecting her research toward military applications. "If we can harness even a fraction of Jupiter's electrical energy," she explained to the weapons development team, "we could power plasma cannons that would make the hegemony wish they'd never heard of humans." Captain Nam Seok-jin was inspecting his destroyer when the orders came through. The ship was called Determination, and it had been his home for 5 years. Now it would become the flagship of humanity's first interstellar rescue mission. But his crew wouldn't be just military personnel. The civilian volunteers were being integrated into every aspect of the fleet. His new communications officer was a former radio DJ. His navigation specialist was a cargo ship pilot. His chief engineer was a woman who had designed fusion reactors. For luxury cruise ships, reported his original communications officer, Lieutenant Bae Junsu, "we're getting volunteer requests from everywhere. Colony ships want to join us. Trading vessels are offering their services. Even some luxury liners are volunteering to carry supplies." Seok-jin studied the tactical display showing the growing fleet. Military destroyers flew alongside converted freighters. Research vessels bristled with newly installed weapons. Even passenger ships had been turned into troop transports. "How many ships total?" he asked. 2,000 and counting, sir." And that's just the first wave. The sight was incredible. Humanity's largest space fleet was assembling, not through military conscription, but through pure volunteer determination. Every ship captain, every crew member, every passenger had chosen to face an enemy that had conquered 200 worlds. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, neutral alien species watched in confusion. The Zephyrians, jellyfish-like beings who lived in gas-giant atmospheres, detected the massive human fleet movements through their sensor networks. "The Terrans have gone insane," their ambassador reported. "They're mobilizing their entire civilization for war. Why would they risk everything for strangers?" The crystalline architects, beings of pure silicon who built wonders across the galaxy, were equally puzzled. "Our calculations show a 97% probability of human defeat. Why do they not simply hide on their homeworld?" But the most confused were the hegemony themselves. War Master Gorthvel, supreme commander of their invasion fleets, intercepted human communications with growing disbelief. "They're sending diplomats everywhere," he reported to the Hegemony Council, "offering protection to species they've never met, forming alliances with worlds they've never visited." Do they think numbers will save them? The Council of Predators, representing the most vicious species in the galaxy, laughed at the reports. The Vorthok delegate, his razor teeth gleaming, found it hilarious. "Let them come," he snarled. "We've conquered species with far more ships and experience. These Deathworlders will make excellent trophies." They had no idea what they had awakened. The human fleet reached Cathara space after 3 weeks of hard travel. What they found broke their hearts and filled them with rage. The beautiful blue-green world was surrounded by massive hegemony dreadnoughts. Orbital stations burned like dying stars. The remains of the Cathara defense fleet drifted as space debris, but the Cathara had fought back in their own way. Instead of surrendering, they had evacuated their population to underground cities, turning their entire world into a massive bunker. The hegemony forces had been forced to land troops and fight for every meter of ground. Captain Seok-Shin stood on his bridge, watching the tactical display. His fleet of 2,000 ships faced a hegemony force of 5,000, but he felt no fear. Behind him stood his crew, the radio DJ, who had become his best communications officer, the fusion engineer who had turned his ship into a weapon, the teacher who now served as his tactical advisor. All ships, he broadcast to the fleet. "We didn't come here to win. We came here to save lives. Remember that? When the shooting starts..." The first human Marines landed on Cathara Prime 12 hours later. Staff Sergeant Oh Min-seok led his squad. Through the rubble of what had once been a beautiful city, his team included a former construction worker, a retired chef, and a college student who had volunteered the day after graduation in the ruins of a school. They found them the first Cathara civilians the humans had ever seen. They were tall and graceful, with large eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of ages. But now those eyes reflected terror, hope, and amazement. "You came," whispered an elderly Cathara teacher, her voice like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. The stories were true. The Terrans really exist. Min-seok helped her to her feet, his rough hands gentle with the fragile alien. "Ma'am, we're here to get you out, all of you." The Cathara looked at the human soldiers, scarred, determined, carrying weapons that could level buildings, but their eyes showed only kindness and protection. "Why?" she asked. "Why did you risk everything for strangers?" Min-seok looked around at his squad, then back at the Cathara civilians huddled in the ruined school. "Because nobody gets left behind. Not on our watch. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when you threatened humanity's adopted family." Staff Sergeant Bae Hoon-woo crouched behind the twisted remains of a Cathara transport vehicle. His squad of Marines spread out behind him. The air stank of burning metal and alien blood through his helmet's tactical display. He could see the heat signatures of hegemony forces moving through the ruined streets ahead. "Contacts, 200 meters, whispered Corporal Kim Jae-won, a former mechanic who had volunteered 3 weeks ago. "Looks like a full Vorthok hunting pack." Hyun-woo had studied the intelligence reports during the journey to Cathara Prime. Vorthoks were the hegemony's elite. Shock troops, 8 feet of pure muscle and rage evolved on worlds where gravity was 3 times Earth normal. Their claws could slice through steel. Their toxic breath could kill most species in seconds, and they had never lost a ground engagement. "Remember your training," Hyun-woo told his squad. "They're big, they're tough, but they've never fought humans before. That's our advantage." The first Vorthok came around the corner like a living nightmare. Its reptilian hide was covered in battle scars. Its yellow eyes glowed with predatory hunger, and its claws dripped with the blood of Cathara civilians. It had been hunting easy prey for so long that it expected the small human soldier to run. Screaming instead, Hyun-woo smiled. The Vorthok lunged forward with incredible speed. Its claws aimed at the human's throat. But Hyun-woo had been training for this moment his entire life. On Earth, he had survived hurricanes, earthquakes, and predators that would terrify most galactic species. He had learned to fight dirty, to adapt, to use every advantage available, as the massive alien charged. Hyunwoo simply stepped aside at the last second. The Vorthic's own momentum carried it past him, and the human grabbed the creature's extended arm, using its weight and speed against it. With a move that would have made his martial arts instructor proud, he slammed the 8-foot monster into the ground with bone-crushing force. The Vorthok tried to get up, dazed and confused. How had this tiny creature defeated it so easily? Before it could recover, Hyunwoo's rifle spoke once, and the elite predator was dead, dapped and overcome. Hyunwoo muttered, checking his weapon, just like training said. The battle that followed became legendary across the galaxy. The Cathara capital city of Harmony's End had once been a place of learning and art. Beautiful spires reached toward the sky, filled with libraries and concert halls. Now it was a war zone, with hegemony forces using the city's own beauty against its inhabitants, but the humans fought differently than any species the hegemony had encountered. When Vorthok hunters tried to ambush them in narrow alleys, the humans responded with coordinated squad tactics that turned the predators into prey. When hegemony aircraft attacked from above, human forces called in precise orbital strikes that eliminated threats without damaging civilian shelters. Lieutenant Chen Haun was leading her squad through the burning arts district when her communications officer picked up distress signals from a nearby school. Through the smoke and chaos, she could see the building, a graceful structure where young Cathara had once learned mathematics and philosophy. Ma'am, reported privately Sunwoo, a teacher who had joined the Marines to protect children everywhere. Sensors show 300 life signs in that school. Most of them are juveniles. Aun studied the tactical situation through her helmet display. Hegemony forces had surrounded the school, using the trapped children as shields. Any direct assault would result in massive civilian casualties. Was the kind of tactical problem that had broken other species, forcing them to choose between victory and innocent lives. But humans didn't see it as a choice. Orbital, this is Ground Team 7. Hound spoke into her communicator, her voice calm despite the chaos around her. I need a danger close precision strike. Target grid 77, Alpha. Civilian safe parameters. The response came back immediately. Ground Team 7, that's extremely close to civilian positions. Are you sure about this? Hound looked at her squad, former teachers, mechanics, store clerks who had volunteered to save innocent lives. They all nodded, trusting her completely. Confirmed orbital.
We're going in hard.
What happened next became the stuff of military legend. The orbital strike came down like the hammer of an angry god, eliminating the hegemony positions with surgical precision while leaving the school completely intact. As the dust settled, Hyun's squad moved in to extract the Cathara children. The young aliens were unlike anything the humans had seen, tall and graceful, even as children, with large eyes that held intelligence far beyond their years. But now, those eyes were filled with terror and hope in equal measure. Their teacher, an elderly Kithara named Velson, approached Hound with wonder in her voice. You are not like other species, she whispered in broken standard. You are ... protectors. Hound knelt down to comfort a frightened Cathara child, her scarred hands gentle despite the weapon she carried. That's what we do, ma'am. Nobody gets left behind. But the humans' greatest display of their nature came when Admiral Dexkar made his fatal mistake. The hegemony commander had been watching the battle from his flagship in orbit, growing more frustrated by the hour. Its elite forces were being systematically destroyed by creatures that should have been easy prey. In desperation, decided to break human morale the same way he had broken dozens of other species. He ordered the public execution of captured Cathara civilians, broadcasting the horrific scene across all frequencies so the humans would see what happened to those they tried to protect. It was the worst decision he ever made. The change in human forces was immediate and terrifying. The disciplined military response transformed into something primal and deadly. Every human soldier, from the newest recruit to the most experienced veteran, felt the same burning rage that had helped their species survive on a world that constantly tried to kill them. Sergeant Park Min-ho had been methodically clearing buildings with his squad when the execution broadcast reached them. He watched in horror as innocent Cathara civilians died for no reason other than hegemony cruelty. Something snapped inside him, the same berserker fury that had driven his ancestors to hunt mammoth with spears and survive ice ages. "No prisoners," he growled into his communicator, his voice barely human. "No mercy. They want to see what Deathworlders really are? Let's show them." Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out. Human forces that had been advancing carefully began moving with deadly efficiency. Hegemony positions that had held for hours fell in minutes as humans displayed the calculated violence that had made them apex predators on their homeworld. The Vorthok hunting packs, terrified for the first time in their lives, found themselves being hunted by creatures that moved like shadows and struck like lightning. Human soldiers used every dirty trick, every survival instinct, every predatory advantage their evolution had given them. Admiral Dexkar watched his tactical display in growing horror as red markers representing his forces disappeared one by one. These humans weren't fighting like civilized soldiers anymore. They were fighting like the ultimate survivors they truly were. His communications officer, reptilian Saurian, turned to him with fear in his yellow eyes. "Admiral Ground, forces are requesting immediate evacuation. They say the humans have gone ... feral." The Dexkar looked at the battle reports flooding in. Elite Vorthok units annihilated. Fortified positions overrun. His best soldiers, predators who had conquered 100 worlds, were fleeing in terror from creatures half their size. "What are these things?" he whispered. His answer came when the humans breached his command bunker on the planet's surface. The last thing he saw before ordering a retreat was a human soldier, a former kindergarten teacher named Song Mai-Rei, standing over the bodies of his elite guards with blood on her hands and fire in her eyes. "They're protectors," she said softly, her voice carrying the weight of every innocent life the hegemony had taken. "And you just threatened our children." Dexkar's final transmission before fleeing the system carried a warning that would echo through hegemony space for generations. "These are not prey. These are apex predators disguised as civilization. Do not engage the Terrans. Do not threaten what they protect. They are nightmares made real." The liberation of Cathara Prime was complete, but the galaxy would never be the same. Word spread quickly through neutral space. The humans had awakened, and their protection came with a price that the hegemony was about to pay in full. The news of Cathara Prime's liberation spread across the galaxy like wildfire. In the floating cities of Aquatica, the fish-like Murhai stopped their peaceful swimming to listen to the impossible reports. On the crystal worlds of the architects, beings of living silicon paused their construction projects to process the data. Everywhere, the same question echoed. How had one species defeated the mighty hegemony? But nowhere was the shock greater than in the dark halls of Hegemony High Command. War Master Gorthvel, supreme commander of their invasion fleets, stood before a holographic display showing the tactical disaster at Cathara Prime. His reptilian features twisted with rage as he watched the retreat footage over and over. "Impossible," he hissed through razor-sharp teeth. Admiral Dexkar commanded 5,000 ships. He had veteran Vorthok legions. How could these ... humans ... defeat our forces? His intelligence officer, a spider-like arachnid with 8 glowing eyes, skittered forward nervously. "War Master, our survivors report that the humans fight unlike any species we've encountered. They seem to become more dangerous when protecting others. Our terror tactics actually made them stronger." Gorthvel's claws scraped against the metal console. He had conquered over 100 worlds in his career, from the warrior societies of the Draconian Empire to the hive minds of the insectoid collectives. Never had his forces retreated from any battlefield. "One world," he snarled to his assembled commanders. "These humans have one pathetic world, while we command an empire of 200 systems. Gather the full battle fleet. Every ship, every warrior, every weapon. We will turn their homeworld into ash and make examples of every human in the galaxy." Mobilization was massive. 50,000 hegemony warships began converging on rally points throughout their empire. Vorthok legions sharpened their claws. Saurian pilots tested their bombers. The greatest war fleet in galactic history was assembling to crush what they saw as an upstart species that had gotten lucky once. Meanwhile, on Earth, President Yoon Ji-won stood before the United Nations General Assembly. The chamber was packed. Not just with human delegates, but with representatives from dozens of alien species who had sought refuge on human worlds. Cathara mathematicians sat next to aquatic engineers. Crystal-based architects shared space with gas-dwelling Zephyrians. The hegemony sees mercy as weakness, President Yoon declared, her voice carrying to every corner of human space. They view compassion as the mark of prey species. They are wrong. Today, humanity declares to the galaxy, never again will innocents face genocide while we stand idle. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Human colonies that had been accepting Cathara refugees began taking in survivors from other threatened worlds. The Mars terraforming project was put on hold so engineers could help fortify refugee camps. Even Earth's luxury resorts were converted into temporary housing for displaced aliens. In the research labs of Titan Station, an unlikely partnership was forming. Veltara, the young Cathara who had sent the original distress call, worked alongside Dr. Li Mingyi to develop new tactical strategies. The Cathara's mathematical genius, combined with human intuition, was producing remarkable results. Your species confuses our equations, Veltara admitted, as she studied human battle reports. Large, gentle eyes reflected the holographic displays showing impossible tactical victories. By all logical calculations, you should have remained safely isolated. Your homeworld is beautiful, your people prosperous. Why risk everything for strangers like us? Dr. Minji looked up from her analysis of hegemony fleet movements, her expression soft despite the dire circumstances. Because once we've seen innocents in danger, we can't just look away. It's not who we are as a species. Veltara's mathematical mind struggled to process this concept, but the probability of survival decreases dramatically when you engage in conflicts that don't directly threaten you. How do you function as a civilization with such ... illogical ... moral imperatives? So maybe that's exactly why we function so. Well, Minji replied with a sad smile. We've learned that protecting others ultimately protects ourselves. A galaxy where innocents can be slaughtered is a galaxy where everyone is eventually at risk. The combined human fleet was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. 10,000 ships of every size and type filled the space around Earth. Military destroyers flew alongside converted cargo haulers. Research vessels bristled with experimental weapons. Even passenger liners had been armed with defensive systems. Admiral Park Dong-yoon stood on the bridge of the flagship Indomitable, watching the tactical displays as the hegemony armada approached. Through hyperspace, his command crew was a mix of career military officers and civilian volunteers. His navigation officer was a former asteroid miner. His weapons specialist was a retired teacher who had spent her career studying conflict resolution, but now applied those same analytical skills to warfare. Sir, reported Commander Omincio, his tactical officer and former cargo ship captain. Long-range sensors are picking up the hegemony fleet. Preliminary count shows 50,000 ships, sir. The bridge fell silent. Even the most optimistic estimates had suggested the hegemony would bring perhaps 20,000 vessels. But 50,000? The odds were 5-1 against humanity. Tactical estimates suggest a survival probability of less than 12%. Omincio continued quietly. Admiral Park studied the display, watching red dots representing enemy. Ships fill the tactical screen like a swarm of angry insects. He thought about his daughter, safe in the underground shelters of Luna Colony. He thought about the Cathara refugees who had found sanctuary on human worlds. He thought about every innocent life that would be lost if the hegemony won. I know. The numbers, Commander, Park said finally, but they don't know us. They think this is about military superiority. They think it's about who has the bigger fleet or the deadlier weapons. He activated the fleet-wide communications channel, his voice carrying to every ship in the massive formation. All vessels, this is Admiral Park. In approximately 6 hours, we will face the largest invasion force in galactic history. They outnumber us 5-1. Their ships are bigger, their weapons more advanced. their soldiers bred for conquest. Across the fleet, 10,000 ship captains listened in silence. But they made one critical error, Park continued. They came to our home, they threatened our family. They have no idea what that means to a human. The hegemony fleet dropped out of hyperspace like a plague of locusts. War Master Gorthfell stood on his command deck, expecting to see a terrified world with scattered defenses. Instead, his sensors showed him something that defied comprehension. The entire Sol system had been transformed into a fortress. Asteroid. Mining platforms bristled with weapons that hadn't existed a month ago. Research stations had become gun platforms mounting experimental cannons. Even civilian habitats around Jupiter and Saturn were armed with defensive systems. What manner of species? He whispered, his reptilian features pale with shock. But the true surprise came when every human ship in the system activated their communications simultaneously. 10,000 voices spoke as one, their words carrying the weight of a species that had decided to make it stand. This is Terra Command. You came to our home. You threatened our pack. That was your mistake. The largest space battle in galactic history was about to begin, and for the first time in his career, War Master Gorthfell felt something he had never experienced before: doubt around him. Officers watched their sensors in growing unease. The human fleet was moving with perfect coordination, each ship knowing exactly where it needed to be. These weren't the panicked formations of a desperate defense. This was the precise positioning of predators preparing to hunt. All ships, Gorthfell commanded, trying to maintain his authority. Attack formation. We end this quickly. But as his massive fleet began its advance, a chilling thought crept into his mind. The humans had rescued the Cathara against impossible odds. They had turned their entire civilization into a weapon in mere weeks. They had accepted refugees from across the galaxy while preparing for war. What kind of species did such things? And what would they do when their own home was threatened? He was about to find out, and the answer would shake the foundations of galactic civilization. The Battle of Sol began at 0600 hours when the first hegemony scouts entered the outer solar system. Captain Nam Seok-jin gripped the command chair of his destroyer Thunderchild, watching 50,000 enemy ships spread across his tactical display like a virus infecting space itself. All stations report ready, announced his tactical officer. Kim Youngman, a former astrophysicist who had learned to calculate death instead of star formation. Weapons systems online. Experimental kinetic bombardment system charged and ready. Seok-jin looked around his bridge crew, people who had been teachers, miners, engineers just months ago. Now they operated military equipment with the precision of veterans, their faces grim with determination. Remember why we're here, he told them. Behind us is Earth, our families, our children, the refugees we've sworn to protect. The hegemony wants to turn our home into a graveyard. We won't let that happen. The Thunderchild led humanity's first attack wave, diving straight into the heart of the hegemony formation. The ship's experimental weapons, designed by Dr. Song, Yuna, using her medical knowledge of how to break things apart at the molecular level, tore through enemy shields like they were made of paper. Target their command ships, Seok-jin ordered, his voice calm despite the chaos erupting around them. Let's show them what happens when you threaten Earth's children. The kinetic bombardment system fired with the sound of thunder. The projectile, accelerated by the same mining equipment that had once carved asteroids, struck War Master Gorthfell's flagship with devastating force. The massive hegemony dreadnought exploded in a brilliant fireball, taking the Supreme Commander and his entire tactical staff with it. But the hegemony fleet was vast. They quickly adapted. Saurian fighters swarmed around human ships like angry hornets. Vorthok boarding parties tried to break through defensive lines. For hours, the battle raged across the solar system. From Mercury's orbital platforms to the gas giant refineries around Jupiter, the turning point came when the hegemony deployed their most feared weapon, a planet-cracker missile capable of splitting worlds in half. It's the massive weapon, larger than most human destroyers, streaked toward Earth with unstoppable momentum. Every human in the solar system watched their screens in horror as the weapon approached their homeworld. On Luna, Colony, children pressed against observation windows. On Mars, families held each other tight. On the research stations around Saturn, scientists calculated that they had less than 10 minutes before their species was extinct. Then a single voice spoke across all frequencies, calm and steady. "This is Lieutenant Colonel Kang Ji-hoon. I have visual on the planet cracker beginning intercept run." The 70-year-old veteran, flying a one-man interceptor that had been designed for asteroid reconnaissance, pushed his small ship to maximum speed. Everyone knew it was a suicide mission. Interceptor's weapons couldn't possibly destroy something that massive. But Kang Ji-hoon wasn't planning to shoot it down. "Control, relay a message to my grandson," he said peacefully. "Tell him Grandpa kept his promise. No one hurts his family while I'm still breathing." The interceptor struck the planet cracker head-on at maximum velocity. The explosion was visible from Mars, a second sun that blazed across the solar system for several seconds before fading. When the light cleared, both the weapon and the heroic pilot were gone. The silence that followed lasted exactly 3 seconds. Then every human in the fleet began moving with a fury that terrified the watching galaxy. The final phase of the battle stopped being a military engagement and became something else entirely, a force of nature unleashed. Human ships that should have been destroyed by enemy fire somehow kept fighting, their crews holding damaged systems together through pure determination. Fighters with no ammunition rammed enemy vessels. Damaged cruisers used themselves as shields. To protect civilian evacuation ships, Admiral Park Dong-yoon watched from the Bridge of Indomitable as his tactical display showed the impossible happening. The hegemony fleet, despite having 5 times more ships, was crumbling under the relentless human assault. "Sir," reported Commander Omincio, her voice filled with amazement, "hegemony forces are beginning to retreat. Their formation is collapsing." Park nodded grimly. He had seen this pattern before in human history. His people became most dangerous when they were protecting something precious. The hegemony had made the fatal mistake of threatening Earth directly, and now they were learning what happened. When you awakened humanity's protective instincts, across the battlefield, hegemony commanders were discovering that their enemies didn't fight like any species they had ever encountered. When human ships were damaged, they adapted new tactics. When their weapons failed, they improvised. When their friends died, they fought harder instead of breaking. The surviving hegemony ships began fleeing in panic, their communications channels filled with desperate warnings. "Do not engage the humans. They are not like other species. They are nightmares that protect instead of prey." Some hegemony vessels tried to surrender, their crews abandoning ship and escape pods. To their amazement, human rescue ships immediately moved to collect the survivors, treating wounded enemies with the same care they gave their own people. A Vorthok warrior, floating in a damaged escape pod, watched in confusion as a human medical ship approached. These creatures had just finished destroying his fleet, and now they were risking their own safety to save his life. It made no sense according to everything he had been taught about galactic warfare. The human medic who pulled him aboard was a young woman named Dr. Park Soo-men, who had left her peaceful medical practice to serve in the fleet. As she treated his injuries, the Vorthok growled a question. "Why do you save enemies?" "Because the war is over," she replied simply. "And because we don't let people die when we can save them. That's what makes us different from you." In the aftermath of the battle, President Yoon Guan addressed not just humanity, but the entire galaxy. Her words were broadcast on every frequency, translated into hundreds of alien languages. Today, hegemony learned that their reign of terror is over. Earth extends its protection to any species that asks for it. We are no longer sleeping. We are no longer hidden. And we will never again allow genocide while we draw breath. The response was immediate. Within days, dozens of species sent ambassadors to Earth seeking protection and alliance. The crystal-based architects offered to build defensive stations. The aquatic Merhai shared their underwater construction techniques. Even species that had never left their home systems began reaching out, knowing that somewhere in the galaxy, protectors existed. 6 months later, young Veltara stood in Central Park, watching human children play with Cathara younglings in the afternoon sun. Their parents worked nearby, humans and aliens collaborating on projects to heal the galaxy's wounds and prevent future genocides. She thought back to that desperate night when she had sent her distress call into the void, hoping against hope that someone would hear. Her mathematical mind had calculated the odds of receiving help at less than 1%. The probability of survival had been effectively zero, but she had been wrong about one critical variable. She had never factored in the existence of a species that would risk everything to protect strangers. That became more dangerous when defending others. It viewed the entire galaxy as their extended family. She had awakened something beautiful, and terrible protectors who would cross impossible distances for a single voice crying for help. Warriors who chose to defend the innocent rather than conquer the weak. A sleeping giant who had opened its eyes and decided the universe needed. Guardians and elderly humans sat down beside her on the park bench. It was Dr. Lee Mingy, the woman who had first received her transmission at Titan Station. "Do you ever regret sending that message?" Mingy asked gently. Veltara watched a human father teaching his Kithara-adopted daughter to throw a ball. Both of them laughing as it sailed over their heads. "No," she said quietly. "I think the galaxy needed to know that somewhere among the stars, there were people who would answer when innocents called for help. The galaxy would never be the same, and that was exactly how it should be." The end.